Talk to people. Where's my bloody coffee? And start. What up? It's Friday. It's good to see you guys again. 11 days in a row. Quicker update on my journey. Gonna go for a run after this. Didn't do it earlier today. It's still a lot of wobbles with procrastination, which sucks. But I, trying to keep consistent with this, feeling a lot better than I did 11 days ago when I first turned the camera on, just trying to get back out into the world, into life, into a job, out of hermit status into living again. And that's where I'm at. And if you've been following all along, then thank you so much. If you've donated for my past work, which is how I look at it, thank you so much. But let's get into this video. What we've been doing is just sort of like going back in time, looking at stuff. I've got here, there's a video on here with me and Velociraptor. This is at a time when Velociraptor was moving from being a player into sort of working for event hubs and progressing his career in that fashion. He was in Street Fighter 4, like probably the best Goken player in America. If you ever want to wind him up, just tell him he was one of the best, because then he will say, what do you mean one of the best? Well, name me one other Goken player. But I seem to remember, in the world at least, Infiltration having a good Goken, and then in America, did Sanford Kelly have a good Goken, or am I imagining that? I don't know. Anyway, Street Fighter 5, Punk came on the scene in 2017, or end of 2016, beginning of 2017. He won a major, I can't remember which one it was, but he just looked so dominant, and it was like, who is this cocky guy who is just completely dominant at this game? But, cocky in a charismatic way. So I was like, I gotta interview this guy, because I was really getting into the interviews. This was the thing. I was really enjoying it, and I thought, well, part of that is getting exclusives, part of that is getting to people first, and I wanted to interview Punk, but I also knew that he was kind of a heel character. I didn't know how he was going to be, so I was a little nervous in that respect, and he's just a really lovely guy, and he was quite young at this point, and just very focused on the game. And in the interview itself, I actually watched this interview back. I rarely do that because I don't like watching myself at all, because I can pick myself apart immediately, and just don't enjoy doing it. But it was fun seeing him, and one of the things I had thought about before going into the Punk interview was, he talks shit about everybody, right? Is there a way of getting him to say something positive about somebody? I thought that would be a nice angle, because I thought that's what I would be up against, right? Was this sort of shit talking heel character. As it turned out, he was pretty chill, and but the question that had come to mind was, well, why don't I ask him who his favourite player is? Because then he has to say something nice about someone. And at this time, I'd gone into the groove of sort of telling players beforehand roughly what I was going to ask them, so that they would have time to think about it, because I wasn't trying to be the gotcha guy. I wasn't trying to, I was trying to gain trust with people. I wasn't trying to take them out of context or take clips, or you'll notice a lot of these interviews don't have any clickbait headlines, and I think if I'd gone down that route, then other players wouldn't have wanted to talk to me. So I wanted to make them feel comfortable, and so I went down to this event, King of New York. It was a round robin event, which was really cool, and it was quiet, and but there was these really great players there, like Dominion and Smug, and I think there was a few more, like Alucard and Shine and Idom. We'll talk about Idom. But Punk himself it was great because, you know, he talked about, he actually brought it up because we talked about it, and he said the Bonchan was his favorite player, which and he actually said Bonchan is my father, which was really funny, and which also allowed me to talk to Bonchan about that when I got to talk to Bonchan. And there was this, for me, there was like this sort of storyline that ran through the interviews, which was really nice because I was really into the interviews, obviously. And, you know, when I spoke to Bonchan, I told him that Punk revered him, and did he have something to say? People don't really remember this because they remember some other stuff that Bonchan said in that interview, obviously. But Bonchan then talked about Punk and gave him some advice on camera and talked about, you know, being at the top and at some point you were going to lose. And it was like he was forecasting the future, which was Evo. And that was when he was really on top of his game and it went straight through to winners final with no problems along the way, if I remember correctly. And then Takedo had his incredible losers run and ended up saying those famous words, fighting games are something great, or something along those lines. And Punk, you know, it was devastating for Punk because he had just been winning. He had said in this interview that, you know, he had been playing at a high level with Smug and a number of other players online on the East Coast, and so he was a highly accomplished player before he sort of stood out to everybody, and he really enjoyed Street Fighter 4 as a game. I think he I don't know how he feels nowadays, you know, given that Street Fighter 5 was updated a number of times, and there's now Street Fighter 6, and he also plays, you know, so many different games. But at the time, he said that, you know, Street Fighter 4 was really special to him, but Street Fighter 5 seemed to potentially fit him slightly better in terms of his playstyle, you know, was good for winning. This was just after Colleen or Colin. I've actually forgotten how that's pronounced. Is it Colleen? Anyway, that character, the ice character, had just been released, and he had seen the character and wasn't sure that character was going to be for him because she looked slow. I think I remember him playing quite a lot of that character at one point later on. But anyway, you know, that's the beauty of these interviews, is they are moments in time. You'd be, you know, standing after something and before something. And yeah, he was very young back then. And he really, you know, because I'd thought about, like, well, what do I want to ask Punk? You know, and having to think about that idea of getting him to speak nicely about somebody, that question, who's your favorite player, just became like a really awesome question to ask literally anybody and everybody. And it made you wonder a lot of the time, because they would always come out with a player where you were just like, what are you talking about? Why is that your favorite player? You know, and it led to more questions and research, and what player is he talking about, and why does he like that player? So I always liked that as a question, and Punk in a way helped me. You know, all of these players helped me evolve as an interviewer, not just in, you know, style or what have you, or confidence, or the way the interview was conducted and so on, but also the content of the interview and the questions. So yeah, really enjoyed interviewing Punk back then. I really enjoyed interviewing all of these guys. You know, Smug is a genius. Well, certainly it was fun interviewing him back then, and, you know, great player, great showman, and great with content as well. And I think he was also at university at the time. So I don't know what he's doing these days. So I'm really sorry. I've been out of the scene for a while now. So a lot of these guys, I'm not sure what they're up to these days. But I also what I wanted to do was try to interview, like, not only the people who were going to bring me views, but try to shine a light, once I had a little bit of an audience, try and shine a light on people that maybe weren't going to get as much attention. And you know, and then some of these people would end up being like, you know, just incredible players. Like Idom back then, at this point, was, you know, I think his nickname was Stoop Kid, something like that, and he was extremely respected by the East Coast in terms of his level of skill and ability, but also, you know, he didn't travel, so the Japanese didn't know about him. The West Coast, you know, some of them probably did, a lot of them probably didn't. And then, you know, he had his opportunity to travel and had his opportunity to prove himself to the world. And I think at that time, if I remember rightly, his life changed quite a lot. And he was such a nice guy as well. But as you can see, like, the interview then had like 2.9 thousand views. Probably had less. Some people probably went back to this interview. But if you were to do an interview with him, like when he started dominating, or when he was having a rivalry with Punk, when he was, you know, really up there and in front of the cameras, winning major tournaments, that number of views would have, you know, certainly been over 10,000 or what have you. Also did, I think I already told you, did stuff with we did this podcast thing called the Nameless Fighting Game Show, which I really enjoyed doing. And then down here is an interview with Nakatu, and I think this might be this is one of my favorite interviews of all time, simply because Nakatu opened up, and we'll talk about that in the next video, because I don't have time in this video. Would like to say thank you to all of you who have donated while I am in this dip, this bottom dip in life. You know, you have your highs, you have your lows, and I'm currently, once I switched that camera on, it was all about accountability and trying to get back up, pick myself up from being a hermit, from being a burden on people, paying my rent, and all of those things. So those of you who have donated, thank you so much, because you are helping. You don't really understand. You will not understand how much you have helped me at this moment in my life. And you know, like, comment, subscribe. If you want a question for the comment, then why don't you tell me what your favorite interview was that I did, since that's kind of what I'm talking about these days. Although I will be talking, as you well know, I will be talking more about life and midlife and moving back to England and when I first moved to America. There's been some really interesting questions in the comments that people have been asking me, things that I just take for granted but they are interested in. And also I will talk a lot about some of the people that really lifted me up and helped me along the way, you know, and yeah, that's it. So I'll see you in the next video. Have a bloody good evening, all right?